to the Unveiled Epic Echoes channel. These days, we're diving deep into an unexplored historical mystery within the large, sun-scorched expanse of the Arizona wilderness, wherein the pink sands whisper secrets and techniques to the wind, and the saguaro cacti stand like silent sentinels guarding forgotten eras. There lies a deserted radio station, its rusted tower piercing the starlit sky like a relic from a bygone age. This is the story of the last radio broadcast from that forsaken outpost, wherein the voice of a lacking DJ named Elias nonetheless echoes through the static at exactly 3 a.m., drawing listeners into a web of historic enigmas and hidden truths that returned to the sunrise of human civilization on these arid lands. All of it began on a sweltering summer evening in 1957, when Elias, a lanky guy with a voice as easy as aged bourbon and eyes that held the intensity of the Grand Canyon, first arrived at KZRTM, a tiny station perched on the brink of nowhere, broadcasting to truckers, ranchers, and the occasional insomniac's soul wandering the highways underneath the moon's faded glow. Elias had come from the bustling streets of Chicago, fleeing an existence of unfulfilled desires and a broken heart, searching for solace inside the isolation of the wilderness, where the partners have been the coyotes howling in the distance and the limitless parade of tumbleweeds rolling like ghosts across the cracked earth. The station itself became a humble affair, a squat building of weathered adobe with an unmarried broadcast room packed with dusty turntables, flickering vacuum tubes, and a microphone that seemed to hum with its personal, mysterious strength, as though it had absorbed the stories of all who had spoken into it before. Elias took to his function with a quiet, spinning records of classic U.S. tunes and jazz ballads late into the night time. But it was his storytelling segments that virtually captivated his sparse target market stories of misplaced gold mines, phantom riders at the vintage pony explicit trails, and whispers of ancient pueblos where the Anasazi had vanished without a hint, leaving in the back of petroglyphs that depicted unusual celestial occasions and figures that regarded eerily like visitors from the celebs. Little did Elias realize that his words had been awakening something a ways older, a dormant pressure buried beneath the wilderness floor, tied to the unexplored historic events of a civilization long erased from the annals of time. As the months become years, Elias grew an increasing number of obsessed on the neighborhood lore, venturing out under the blistering solar to explore far-flung canyons and hidden ruins, where he observed fragments of pottery etched with symbols that predated the acknowledged Native American tribes, symbols that pointed out an exceptional cataclysm, a forgotten flood that had reshaped the land in the past, and a sacred expertise handed down via shamans who communed with the spirits of the earth. One fateful night time, during an unprecedented wasteland thunderstorm that lit the sky with jagged bolts of lightning, Elias unearthed an unusual artifact in a shallow cave, a crystalline stone, easy and iridescent, buzzing faintly in his palm as though alive with an internal light. He introduced it lower back to the station, putting it on his desk beside the microphone, unaware that this relic was a key to unlocking the hidden memories of an ancient folks that had harnessed the electricity of sound waves to speak throughout substantial distances. An era misplaced to time, but echoing inside the myths of the Hopi and Navajo because the voice of the ancestors. That very evening, because the clock ticked in the direction of middle of the night, Elias started his broadcast with his usual warmth, his voice rolling out over the airwaves like a mild breeze, soothing the weary travelers who tuned in for organization. But as the hours deepened and the hurricane raged outside, rattling the station's tin roof, something shifted. The crystal commenced to glow softly, and Elias felt an inexplicable pull, his phrases flowing now not from his script, however, from a deeper property of memory that wasn't his personal. He mentioned the extremely good migration of historic peoples throughout the Bering Strait. However, with details no historian had ever uncovered, memories of underground towns built to get away, a cosmic catastrophe in which elders preserved expertise in harmonic frequencies that could heal the ill or summon rain from cloudless skies. Listeners referred to as in, their voices trembling with awe, reporting that they may pay attention, faint undertones in Elias' broadcast, like whispers from the grave, revealing forgotten truths about the proper origins of the petrified forests and the meteor craters that dotted the landscape. Now not as random acts of nature, however, as markers left via those ancient wanderers to manual future generations by means of 3 a.m. as the hurricane subsided and the desert fell right into a profound silence. Elias' voice took on an airy first rate, weaving in private revelations that blurred the line between records and hallucination. He defined visions of a lost day trip in the 1800s, led by using a forgotten explorer named Harlan, who had stumbled upon the equal crystal within the Superstition Mountains, best to vanish after broadcasting cryptic messages from a makeshift camp. Messages that hinted at a hidden aquifer under the desert, a supply of eternal water guarded via spectral beings that embodied the spirits of extinct megafauna, just like the large sloths and saber-toothed cats whose bones lay fossilized in the sands. Elias' target market sparse however devoted, grew that night, with insomniacs from as some distance as Phoenix and Tucson huddling by way of their radios, their eyelids heavy yet not able to shy away. Lulled through the rhythmic cadence of his narrative that promised discovery without the jolt of fear, a relaxing unraveling of mysteries that made the huge, unknown sense intimate and secure. But as dawn approached, Elias paused, his breath catching, and then he vanished mid-sentence, the broadcast reducing to static. The station door found ajar the following morning by a concerned sheriff, and not using a signal of war, only the crystal gone and a faint echo lingering within the air. The station changed into shuttered quickly after, deemed cursed by using locals who whispered of the desolate tracked phantom. But the pronounces did not stop. Every night time at 3 a.m. for decades thereafter, people who dared to tune into the dead frequency could listen Elias' voice rising from the ether. Now not a recording, however, something alive, recounting ever deeper layers of the hidden history, revealing how the historic ones had predicted the upward push of contemporary America, embedding warnings in the traces of the land about overreaching ambition and the lack of concord with nature. Adventurers and historians alike sought the station, drawn by means of tales of plot twists in Elias' ongoing saga. One night time he spoke of a secret authorities experiment in the 1940s, where bloodless battle scientists had tapped into the crystal's frequency to speak with supposed extraterrestrial intelligences, simplest to unleash a temporal echo that trapped souls in limbo. Every other broadcast unveiled the forgotten story of a 16th century Spanish conquistador who had located a map in a ruined kiva, Maine, to a cache of artifacts that proved transatlantic touch predated Columbus with the aid of centuries, with Viking runes mingling with Mayan glyphs in a desert cave. The tension built over the years as extra humans mentioned listening to personalized messages woven into the publicizes, names of cherished ones, lengthy past, or secrets buried in family trees, suggesting that Elias, or something entity spoke through him, was drawing from a collective unconscious tide to the historical truths of human migration and survival. Characters emerged in those nocturnal memories, complex and vivid. There has been Maria, a Navajo elder who had mentored Elias in his early days, her expertise rooted in oral histories that traced back to the Pleistocene. Her man or woman, a beacon of quiet energy, revealing how her ancestors had used sound ceremonies to navigate the moving dunes. Then got here Dr. Hart, a fictional archaeologist, inspired through actual pioneers like Bell, who within the story ventured into the wasteland in the 1970s to debunk the parable, only to turn out to be entangled within the mystery, her skepticism crumbling as she decoded petroglyphs that mirrored Elia's words, uncovering a plot twist wherein the crystal was not a natural formation, but an engineered tool from a pre-Ice Age civilization that had collapsed due to misuse of sonic strength, inflicting earthquakes that reshaped the Colorado Plateau. The growing tension culminated in a modern-day day trip led by way of a young podcaster named Alex, a descendant of Maria, who in our narrative braves the abandoned station on a moonless nighttime, ready with recording gear and a heart full of interest. His journey a metaphor for rediscovering forgotten roots in a quick-paced global. As Alex methods the creaking door, the wind carries faint melodies from within, and at 3 a.m. sharp, the published begins, Elia's voice welcoming him by way of name, pulling him right into a climax in which the crystal reappears, humming inside the broadcast room, revealing the closing hidden truth. The ancient people have been not extinct, however, had transcended right into a frequency realm. The usage of the barren region's isolation as a portal, and Elias had joined them willingly. His publicizes a bridge to proportion information that would heal the divides of current society, from environmental forget to cultural erasure. In a swirl of mild and sound, Alex faces a preference to broadcast the very last message, exposing the fact and risking chaos, or to permit the thriller fade into legend. But he chooses know-how, his voice merging with Elia's in a harmonious resolution that soothes the soul. The publicizes ceasing as the crystal dims, leaving the desolate tract in peaceful silence. A satisfying end wherein discovery brings now not destruction, however quiet enlightenment, reminding us that some truths are meant to be whispered within the night, lulling us into desires in which history and mystery dance under the celebs. This mysterious journey ends right here, but stay tuned for extra untold stories in our next video. Enroll in the channel and hit the bell icon so that you don't pass over any new tailies. Thank you, and notice you once more, in the hushed aftermath of Alex, come across, wherein the crystals glow diminished, just like the last embers of a campfire, underneath a canopy of twinkling constellations. The Arizona barren region appeared to preserve its breath, as if the historic sands themselves have been considering the burden of the revelations that had simply been unearthed. But the tale failed to, without a doubt, give up there, for the echoes of Elia's voice lingered within the minds of folks who had listened, seeping into dreams and waking thoughts alike, urging a deeper exploration of the forgotten paths that crisscrossed this arid, barren region. Alex, along with his podcast system slung over his shoulder and a newfound reverence in his step, emerged from the deserted station because the first tips of sunrise painted the horizon in gentle pinks and golds, the cool night-time air giving manner to the promise of some other relentless day. He knew he could not keep this to himself. The broadcasts would possibly have ceased. However, the truths they carried demanded to be shared, no longer in frantic shouts, but inside the calm, measured tones that reflected the wasteland's very own undying rhythm, riding back alongside the dusty dual carriageway 89, beyond the jagged silhouettes of the Superstition Mountains that loomed like guardians of misplaced fortunes. Alex contemplated at the layers of history Elias had peeled lower back, layers that intertwined actual explorers' tales with the fictitious hidden factors that made the narrative pulse with lifestyles. He recalled how Elias' voice, in a single specially haunting broadcast, had delved into the legend of the lost Dutchman mine. Now not because the oft-instructed yarn of Jacob Waltz's hidden gold, however, as a veiled map to an historical Anasazi repository, wherein the gold, turned into no longer metal, however, know-how inscribed on capsules of petrified wood, detailing celestial alignments that could predict sun flares and drought centuries in advance. Waltz, in this retold history, wasn't an insignificant prospector, but an unwitting vessel, much like Elias himself, who had stumbled upon a shard of the identical crystalline era in the course of his 1870s wanderings, its hum guiding him to veins of quartz that resonated with the Earth's magnetic fields, a secret the Apache tribes had long protected as the voice of the thunder beings. As Alex's truck rattled over potholes, kicking up plumes of red dirt that danced in the mirror, he pieced together more fragments from Elias' ethereal monologues, ones that had drawn from Hopi prophecies to give an explanation for the Anasazi's vanishing act. Now not a simple drought, as historians claimed, however a deliberate transcendence, a migration to the fourth global, as foretold inside the legends of the blue big-name Kachina, in which the human beings shed their bodily bureaucracy to inhabit frequencies beyond human perception, leaving in the back of ruins like canyon as anchors for those who may observe. Elias had whispered of proof hidden in the petroglyphs at Deer Valley, spirals and megastar maps that aligned with modern astronomical information, suggesting the Anasazi had determined comets that altered climates, forcing their disappearance as a survival method, their spirits echoing through the canyons in ways that current technology dismissed as wind. However, Elias knew better. His voice, soothing but insistent, portrays snapshots of underground kivas where shamans performed sonic rituals, using whole reeds and crystal amplifiers to ship messages throughout miles, a precursor to radio itself, lost until rediscovered with the aid of forgotten explorers like Francisco, the 18th century Franciscan who traversed the Sonoran desolate tract, encountering Hopi elders who shared fragments of this historic knowledge before vanishing into the mirages. In Elias' story, wasn't only a missionary, but a mystery chronicler. His journals buried close to the river, hinting at encounters with star people who descended in orbs of light, supplying expertise approximately sustainable agriculture in arid lands, techniques that could have avoided the famines plaguing early settlers if no longer suppressed through colonial fears. Alex stopped at a roadside diner in Flagstaff, the kind with vinyl cubicles worn smooth by way of truckers' elbows and espresso that tasted like tar but warmed the soul. And there he met an vintage timer named Hank, a weathered rancher with a face like cracked leather based and eyes that flickered with unspoken testimonies. Hank, it became out, were certainly one of Elias' unique listeners back in '57, tuning in on his old Zenith radio while mending fences under the Milky Way, over pie and refills. Hank shared his very own brush with the mystery, a night time within the '60s while he'd ventured into the ghost metropolis, a forgotten outpost in the desolate tract wherein warm springs bubbled like whispers from the underworld. And there, amid the ruins of pioneer cabins, he'd heard Elias' broadcast emanating no longer from a radio, however, from the ground itself. The earth vibrating with testimonies of the civilization, predecessors to the Anasazi, who engineered giant canal structures traced by way of air surveys in the 1930s. Canals that mirrored the veins of the human frame and channeled now not just water, however line energies for recuperation ceremonies. Hank spoke in a low drawl, his phrases flowing just like the after a rare rain, revealing how Elias' voice had twisted the regarded history of Spanish conquistadors like, who in 1540 crossed Arizona, not completely for gold, but chasing rumors of the 7 cities of, which Elias claimed have been no longer legendary metropolises, however electricity hubs, where the ancients harnessed geothermal power, their disappearance tied to a cataclysmic eruption that buried them beneath lava flows now unsuitable for herbal formations. As the solar climbed higher, Alex bid Hank farewell and continued south, his thoughts a whirlwind of connections, imagining Elias as a contemporary day shaman, his radio station a conduit for those buried truths, similar to the deserted KSUN in Bisbee, some other Arizona relic in which broadcasts as soon as carried mining memories laced with Apache lore, stories of spirits guarding silver veins that doubled as portals to the underworld. Elias, in his proclaims, had woven within the destiny of the brothers early 20th century adventurers of the Grand Canyon who photographed rapids and cliffs, however secretly documented petroglyphs depicting ant-humans, Hopi legends of beings who guided survivors underground in the course of global finishing floods, suggesting the canyon's depths hid entrances to these subterranean nation-states, accessed via harmonic keys, just like the crystal. The plot thickened in Alex's memories with twists Elia's unveiled. A Central Authority cover-up inside the 1940s, wherein bloodless battle operatives at a far-off Arizona base experimented with recovered Anasazi artifacts, attempting to weaponize sonic frequencies for mind manipulate, only to cause temporal anomalies that trapped sellers in loops, their echoes bleeding into radio static, mistaken for interference. One such agent, a fictional individual named Lena, descendant of the earlier explorer Harlan, infiltrated the station in disguise, her complexity unfolding as a female torn between duty and discovery, her love for Elias blooming in stolen moments amid the gadget hum, until she vanished with him, her voice occasionally intertwining together with his within the 3 a.m. broadcasts, adding feminine whispers of maternal Hopi understanding about cycles of advent and destruction. Anxiety rose as Alex neared Phoenix, visitors humming like a far-off swarm, when his buzzed with messages from listeners who'd heard rumors of his excursion, reviews of latest anomalies, like lights over the superstition mountains mirroring the superstar people of Hopi myth, and disappearances echoing the Anasazi's destiny, perhaps modern transcendences. He pulled over at Pueblo, the archaeological park in which historical ruins whispered of ball courts and irrigation marvels. And there, below the of a mesquite tree, he recorded a brand new episode, his voice calm and welcoming, delving deeper into Elia's saga, introducing Maria's granddaughter, Sophia, a complicated character mixing culture and tech, an archaeologist using AI to decode petroglyphs, uncovering a twist. The crystal wasn't singular, however part of a community, scattered throughout the desert, just like the canals of the, and activating them ought to repair stability to the parched land, summoning rains, as in the old ceremonies. Sophia joined Alex in a climactic go back to the station, underneath a complete moon that bathed the tower in silver, where they reignited the printed Elias voice, returning now not as a ghost, but a guide, revealing the final hidden reality. The Anasazi hadn't fled enemies or drought by myself, however a self-inflicted savagery, cannibalism born of desperation, as in step with some theories, however redeemed through transcendence. A lesson for today. As frequencies aligned, the barren region bloomed in vision, tensions resolving in harmony, characters finding peace, the tale wrapping in soothing closure, but hinting at extra mysteries, like the forgotten ghost Metropolis or misplaced journals, looking ahead to the subsequent seeker. This mysterious journey ends right here, but live tuned for more untold stories in our subsequent video. Enroll in the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't pass over any new testimonies. Thanks, and notice you again inside the tranquil glow of the entire moon that bathed the Arizona wasteland in a silvery hush, in which the saguaro palms reached skyward like ancient petitioners to the stars. Sophia and Alex stood out of doors, the abandoned radio station, their hearts nonetheless thrumming with the residual harmony of Elia's very last steering, a resonance that regarded to vibrate through the very grains of sand beneath their feet. The air was cool and crisp, carrying the faint scent of creosote bushes after a phantom rain that in no way fell. And as they walked back to Alex's truck, the load of the revelations settled upon them like a tender blanket, inviting mirrored image instead of alarm. Sophia, along with her darkish hair tied, returned, and eyes reflecting the knowledge of her Navajo lineage, blended with the sharp mind of her instructional hobbies, grew to become to Alex, and spoke in a voice as gentle because the nighttime breeze, suggesting they delve deeper into the guidelines Elias had left the ghost town, a forsaken speck at the map southwest of Phoenix, in which the ruins of a 1920s land ripoff mingled with older, unspoken histories of aqueducts that once turned the barren land into verdant fields, now swallowed via the relentless strengthening of the dunes. Alex nodded, his thoughts already mapping the direction along forgotten, past the Papago Buttes, in which legends pointed out sacred wells guarded by serpentine spirits, and they spark off under the canopy of constellations that the ancients had charted with unerring precision, stars that Elias broadcasts had revealed as guides for nomadic tribes traversing the Pleistocene landscapes, when mammoths roamed, and the land was a lush savanna before the notable drying, because the truck's headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating fleeting glimpses of jackrabbits darting throughout the route. Sophia shared memories exceeded down from her grandmother Maria, testimonies of the ant people, who, in Hopi mythology, sheltered humanity during cataclysms, their underground domains echoing with the same sonic rituals Elias had described, rituals that used crystal lattices to make bigger voices throughout chasms, a generation perhaps borrowed from even older visitors whose craft had etched the like strains inside the Arizona Badlands, lines invisible from the floor, but aligning with solstices when considered from above. Alex, gripping the wheel with a mixture of exhilaration and serenity, recalled a published in which Elias twisted the story of the 1860s overland mail course, not as an insignificant stagecoach path, but a conduit for smuggling historic artifacts unearthed by using miners in the Vulture Mountains. Artifacts that hummed with electricity and have been stated to have driven guys mad with visions of misplaced towns under the Salt River, cities in which the human beings had fused Anasazi and ways, growing hybrid ceramics inscribed with prophecies of a returning moist era. The adventure took them via the twilight hours, the desert awakening with the subtle sounds of nocturnal life, the distant hoot of an owl, the rustle of lizards inside the underbrush. And as they arrived on the ghost city's skeletal remains, timber frames bleached white through the solar, and one too buried in sand drifts, they felt the pull of history's undercurrents, a mystery unfolding just like the petals of a night time blooming Sirius. Exploring by flashlight, they found a collapsed nicely, its depths echoing faintly, and lowering a rope, Alex retrieved a weathered journal certain in cracked leather. Its pages yellowed, however legible under the beam, revealing entries from Francisco himself, the Franciscan explorer whose 1770s expeditions had brushed towards the edges of this enigma, wrote now not of conversions, however, of encounters with Pima shamans, who confirmed making a song stones that might summon water from dry arroyos, stones comparable to Elias crystal, utilized in ceremonies that harmonized with the earth's vibrations to prevent the famines that plagued the region. A forgotten fact, suppressed by using colonial records to preserve manage over the indigenous knowledge. The magazine's plot twist got here in a sketched map, pointing to a hidden close to the bend, a sinkhole where they had saved their sonic files, clay drugs etched with waveforms that, when struck, reproduced voices from the beyond, a precursor to phonographs that Elias had hinted at in his pronounces, linking it to Edison's innovations stimulated by using whispers of local ingenuity. Tension simmered as Sophia and Alex pressed on, the magazine's revelations drawing shadowy figures, contemporary treasure hunters or authorities' agents who trailed them inside the distance, their jeeps lighting flickering like will-o'-the-wisps, evoking the phantom riders of vintage pony explicit lore that Elias loved to recount. Riders who carried now not mail, but encoded messages about meteor impacts that formed craters like Meteor Crater itself. Impacts that the ancients interpreted as divine interventions, scattering crystals across the land as gifts for future seers, evading their pursuers via a labyrinth of canyons in which the walls bore diminished petroglyphs of spiral galaxies and humanoid figures with elongated heads. Sophia and Alex reached the at dawn, the solar rising like a benevolent eye over the horizon, casting golden rays into the watery depths below. Diving in with makeshift tools, they exposed a chamber sealed for centuries, its walls lined with those clay pills, and activating one with a mild faucet, they heard voices, not Elia's, however ancestral tones, chanting in a language that blended Proto-Uto-Aztecan with unknown cadences, unveiling hidden tales of a pre-Clovis subculture that crossed no longer simply the Bering Strait, however oceanic routes on reed boats, evidenced by way of shared motifs with Polynesian artifacts, a trans-Pacific connection long debated, but right here, substantiated in sonic form. Complex characters deepen the narrative. There has been a fictional descendant of, a reclusive historian who joined their quest through a risk come upon at a roadside buying and selling put up. His skepticism overlaying a private loss tied to the desert's curses, his arc bending towards notion, because the capsules discovered his family's position in safeguarding the expertise during the Mexican-American War, and Lena's spectral impact back through echoes within the chamber, her voice merging with the chants to warn of misuse. Her man or woman, a tragic bridge among eras, her love for Elia's transcending time, because the climax built in this humid include the pursuers arrived, discovered as eco-activists, misguided through partial truths, searching for the crystals to force rains upon the drought-afflicted Southwest. But Sophia's wisdom prevailed, negotiating a peaceful resolution in which the information became shared digitally, now not exploited. The drug's frequencies broadcast online in a modern-day echo of KZRT, recuperation divides, and provoking conservation efforts that mirrored the ancients' harmony with the land. Within the soothing, as they emerged into the warming day, the barren region blooming metaphorically with renewed information. Alex and Sophia parted methods with promises of future explorations. The tale's threads tying into a tapestry of discovery that lulled the soul into violent contemplation, hinting at endless horizons wherein more forgotten truths awaited, just like the enigmatic ruins of Casa or the whispered legends of the Spig name maps. This mysterious adventure ends right here. However, stay tuned for extra untold testimonies in our subsequent video. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so that you don't leave out any new tales. Thank you and see you again inside the golden haze of the Arizona morning, wherein the sun ascended like a watchful elder over the significant expanse of the Sonoran wasteland, casting long shadows from the Ocotillo flora that swayed lightly within the awakening breeze. Sophia and Alex parted from this edge with the clay pills cautiously secured in a weathered satchel, their surfaces nonetheless buzzing faintly, as though alive with the voices of beyond. The eco-activists, now allies instead of adversaries, dispersed into the shimmering warmness waves, their jeeps kicking up trails of dirt that blended with the horizon, wearing promises to use the understanding for recovery projects that could revive the parched aquifers without worrying the sacred stability the ancients had so carefully maintained. As Alex and Sophia drove closer to the enigmatic ruins of Casa, a towering, exquisite house stood as sentinel amid the flatlands close to. They felt the pull of but every other layer in Elia's unfolding tapestry, a structure that Elias proclaims had described not as a trifling ceremonial website, but as an acoustic amplifier, its adobe walls designed to resonate with chants that could broadcast intentions throughout the valley, just like the radio waves that had carried his personal voice through the ether. The adventure southward, alongside Interstate 10, became a meditative one, the highway buzzing under the tires like a low-frequency mantra, with roadside vistas of cotton fields and remote mountain levels evoking the agricultural prowess of the who had engineered over 1,000 miles of canals to coax existence from the arid soil, a feat Elias had likened to the veins of a large organism pulsing with the lifeblood of the unsalt rivers. Sophia, leaning back inside the passenger seat with the journal of Open on her lap, read aloud passages that intertwined with Elias' memories, detailing how the Franciscan had witnessed Pima rituals, wherein drummers synchronized their beats with the earth's tremors, predicting earthquakes that reshaped the landscape, hidden truths buried in missionary reports to keep away from accusations of heresy from the Spanish Inquisition. Alex, his eyes on the street, but his thoughts wandering the timelines, recalled a especially soothing broadcast wherein Elias delved into the mystery of the casa itself, built round 1300 AD and deserted by 1450, not due to invasion as a few historians posited, but as a part of a cyclical migration foretold in celestial observations. The structure's alignment with the solstices permitting shamans to music into cosmic frequencies that warned of imminent climatic shifts, just like cutting-edge seismographs, however powered by means of human voice and motive. Upon arriving at the site, preserved beneath a protective canopy that shielded the historic partitions from the relentless sun, they wandered the grounds within the soft afternoon mild, the air thick with the heady scent of dirt and sage, wherein signs and symptoms observed ball courts and irrigation, but neglected the deeper sonic heritage that Elias had unveiled, how the fantastic house's chambers amplified whispers into roars, used for communal storytelling that preserved oral histories of from the Pleistocene, whilst glacial melts carved the canyons and left at the back of fossilized echoes in the form of petrified wooden that rang like bells whilst struck. Here they met, a park ranger with roots and a quiet intensity that mirrored Maria's, her character emerging as a mum or dad of the web page's secrets and techniques, sharing over thermoses of natural tea how her ancestors' star maps, etched on buckskin and hidden in circle of relatives' heirlooms, depicted constellations now not only for navigation, but for harmonic attunement, aligning with Elia's descriptions of shamans who used crystal pendants to talk with distant clans for the duration of the first-rate dispersals following the crumble. Its complexity unfolded as she found out a private quest, pushed via desires, wherein Elia's voice guided her to artifacts buried below the ruins. Artifacts that proved they had inherited sonic tech, adapting it for recovery ceremonies that mended each frame and land after the volcanic eruptions that dotted the location with cinder cones like those at Sunset Crater, which Elias had broadcast as markers of renewal instead of destruction, the ash enriching the soil for brand spanking new boom in a cycle of loss of life and rebirth. As nightfall fell, painting the sky in hues of lavender and amber, the institution ventured into confined regions with quiet approval, unearthing a small cache of resonant stones close to the ball courtroom. Stones that, whilst organized in a spiral, produced tones that vibrated the ground subtly, summoning visions for Alex of forgotten explorers like Marcos, the 1539 friar who preceded and reported cities of gold that had been definitely those acoustic hubs glowing underneath moonlight, their hum fallacious for divine auras by using awestruck Europeans. Tension stirred with the arrival of the historian from their earlier come across, who had accompanied clues from his magazine to sign up for them. His arrival timed with a surprising dust storm that whipped the air into a frenzy, as if the barren region itself protested the disturbance, revealing his ulterior cause. No longer mere scholarship, but a own family legend tying him to Lena, making him her tremendous nephew, pushed by using inherited echoes to reclaim the crystal community and save you its exploitation by means of corporate water barons eyeing the aquifers. Within the storm's climax, huddled within the superb house's partitions that amplified the wind's howl right into a symphonic roar, they confronted illusions born of the stone's electricity, spectral figures of elders debating the abandonment, their voices debating the ethics of transcendence versus endurance. A plot twist in which the collapse wasn't failure, however, a strategic retreat to keep information in frequency shape. Much like Elia's personal vanishing, Sophia's perception resolved the battle. The usage of the stones to harmonize turmoil with guardianship, forging a percent to document the findings ethically, sharing them via Alex's podcast in episodes that lulled listeners with the rhythmic retelling of superstar lore, intertwined present-day astronomy, confirming alignments with observatories like Peak, in which telescopes now peered into the equal skies the ancients had mapped with unaided eyes. Because the typhoon cleared, revealing a celebrity-studded vault overhead, the group dispersed with renewed cause. The ruins of Casa status eternal, a beacon for those looking for the forgotten truths of harmony amid chaos. The narrative weaving onward to whispers of other websites, just like the Bop Weblo or the Basin Mysteries, wherein greater layers awaited unveiling within the desolate tract's undying embrace. This mysterious adventure ends here. However, stay tuned for extra untold memories in our subsequent video. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you do not miss any new tailies. Thanks, and see you once more. Because the remaining echoes of the Casa stones dwindled into the velvet Arizona nighttime. The four of them, Alex, Sophia, and stood beneath a sky so thick with stars it felt like the universe itself became leaning all the way down to concentrate. The wasteland wind had gentled to a lullaby, brushing across their faces like cool silk, wearing the faint perfume of ironwood blossoms that best open after dark. None of them wanted to depart just yet. The awesome house behind them regarded to breathe, its adobe walls exhaling centuries of quiet understanding, and they all felt the identical unstated pull. The tale turned into not finished, threading itself via the land. Broke the silence first, her voice low and melodic, the cadence of someone raised on lullabies sung in and English alike. There's one more place Elias used to speak about, she stated, tilting her head closer to the northeast, where the mountains rose in dark silhouette against the milky manor. He referred to as it the region in which the river sings under the stones. My grandmother stated the antique ones named it backwards in time, earlier than the constructed their cliff houses. Elias swore the water down there nevertheless contains the original broadcast, the first voice the wasteland ever learned to recall. Nevertheless, shaken from the typhoon's visions, Polt's journal from his percent and flipped to a brittle page. None of them had noticed earlier than, in fatting ink, the friar had sketched a river bending like a question mark, with an unmarried line below. Lo's angels sin boca. Here the earth sings without a mouth. Sophia traced the drawing with a fingertip. That's creek, she whispered, wonder softening her student's precision. Underneath the dam, wherein thee and the Apache met long earlier than both name existed. The water runs underground for miles, then surfaces in pools so clean you could see the day prior to this in them. Alex felt the familiar tug in his chest, the same one which had pulled him to the abandoned station weeks in the past. he checked out his new companions, their faces lit faintly by using starlight and the glow of shared cause, and knew the wilderness had selected its next pilgrims. They left earlier than sunrise, 4 silhouettes in cars completing the beeline toll road, because the sky blushed rose gold behind the 4 peaks. The street climbed through pine-scented air, a startling comparison to the low wilderness they'd left at the back of. And by the time they reached, the sun became spilling across the rim like heat honey. From there, they observed a woodland carrier avenue that narrowed to 2 ruts. Beyond meadows where elk grazed inside the mist, till the land dropped away again into Pinkrock, United States, and the faint, rhythmic hush of hidden water reached their ears. Creek emerges from the earth in a sequence of resurrection swimming pools, springs, so pure the Apache called them, water that recollects the glacier. Cottonwoods arch overhead, their leaves whispering a regular smooth applause, led them along a deer trail to a place in which the creek disappears beneath a shelf of limestone, sliding into darkness with a valid, like distant radio static. Kneeling at the edge, she located her palm on the stone and began to hum, a low, constant observe that seemed to draw the creek's very own voice upward. The others joined without thinking, 4 voices mixing into a chord older than language, after which it passed off. From the submerged channel rose a shimmer of sound, now not loud, however flawlessly clean, like a overdue night time station, eventually locking into recognition. Elia's voice, unmistakable heat as mesquite smoke, gentle as a grandfather tucking you in. You found the river that by no means forgets friends. That is wherein all of it began, long before towers and tubes and lonely microphones, before the ice retreated, whilst human beings first observed the splendid herds south alongside the green corridors. They paused right here. They drank, they listened, and the water taught them the first track, the one that announces where simplest borrowed from the celebs, for a bit even as the narrative spread out in that subterranean broadcast, soothing and seamless, telling of a time while the creek ran above ground in an extensive, lazy braid complete of fish and cattails, how the earliest arrivals, human beings whose spear points are nevertheless discovered in mammoth ribs, built fires on these banks, and located that positive whole reeds, while blown across the water's surface, produced tones that traveled for miles alongside the canyon partitions. How the one's tones have become messages, warnings, love songs, start bulletins, demise songs. How the understanding keepers in the end found out to carve tuning holes into river stones, developing that rang like bells when struck in collection, and how the one's stone voices have been the barren region's first radio community, solar-powered by day, celebrity-powered by using night. Elias mentioned a lady named, a healer with hair the color of saguaro fruit, who ought to quiet a colicky infant or calm a stamping herd with a single word carried on the water's breath. He informed how, whilst the great drying got here and the creeks commenced to sink, led her human beings in laying the stone devices into the float itself, trusting the underground river to carry the track forward through time. The manner a mom trusts a lullaby to survive her very own heartbeat. As the hidden contemporary carried Elias' words, the four listeners noticed visions in the rippling floor, gentle hands setting the remaining beneath an overhang of travertine. Centuries later, a young Apache lady locating one of these identical stones and hearing her high-quality grandmother's voice interior it. Then a potter urgent a spiral into wet clay, so the sound might recognize wherein to return. Then a homesick cavalry bugler in 1880 playing on a battered trumpet, and understanding the echo coming again wasn't his own. Every technology adding its voice to the infinite braid, wept without shame. Information at final why his family had usually been drawn to lonely places with shifting water, laid her ranger badge at the stone, whispering way to ancestors. She now felt respiration beside her. Sophia closed her eyes and let the cord settle into her bones like heat rain. Alex surely listened, recording not anything this time, letting the river do the broadcasting, while the solar reached its zenith and poured white mild into the canyon. The voice underneath the stones grew softer, greater intimate, the way a figure's tone lowers while the kid is finally asleep. Bring this gently, Elias murmured, now not as discovery, but as remembering. The wilderness isn't empty, it's listening. Each dry wash, every petrified log, every shard of broken pottery is a speaker looking ahead to the proper frequency of kindness. While you go away right here, speak softly to the land. Tell it you consider. That is the most effective subscription it asks. The water quieted. An unmarried dragonfly hovered, iridescent, then darted away. The four buddies sat in silence until the cottonwood shadows stretched lengthy throughout the swimming pools. Subsequently, they returned up the trail, lighter, as even though the river had taken something heavy from them and changed it with clear jogging sound. No one recommended another vacation spot. The tale had observed its own perfect finishing, now not with revelation's shout, but with memory's hush. Years later, vacationers alongside that extent of creek every so often file hearing faint track at twilight flute-like, almost human, growing from the rocks, wherein the water slips out of sight. They smile, turn off their engines, and concentrate till the celebs come out, feeling inexplicably drowsy, secure, and deeply, inexplicably welcomed home. This mysterious journey ends right here. But stay tuned for extra untold memories in our subsequent video. Join the channel and hit the bell icon so that you don't miss any new testimonies. Thanks, and see you once more. Years slipped by means of like slow water underneath stone, and the four buddies never once more amassed in a single vicinity all at once. Life, as it does, scattered them lightly across the southwest, the way cottonwood seeds trip the wind. Alex stored the podcast alive. However, the episodes grew shorter, quieter, 10-minute meditations recorded beside springs and dry washes. His voice softer than ever, as although he have been without delay right into a listener's remaining eyelids. Sophia took a post at the College of Arizona, coaching a seminar called Acoustic Archaeology that stuffed each seat and left students dreaming in spirals. Stayed on the rim, guiding small groups to places the maps nonetheless go away blank, coaching them a way to pay attention instead of how to look. Disappeared into records in Mexico City and Seville, chasing ghost via yellowed parchment, mailing postcards that usually ended with the equal line. The river remains making a song. However, the barren region has a way of calling its humans home when the time is proper. It began with a single raindrop on Alex's windshield one monsoon nighttime in July. A drop that hit the glass and unfolded into the appropriate shape of the spiral he had remaining seen on a pot. Then the radio in his truck, and vintage one he kept for nostalgia, crackled without became on, just static at first, the comforting hush of remote lightning, after which Elia's voice, quieter than memory, hotter than sleep. Buddies, the circle is prepared to shut. Come returned to the station. One ultimate broadcast. Carry not anything, however, yourselves. Alex knew. All of them knew. Inside a week, 4 separate phones buzzed with the identical, not possible text from a number of that displayed simplest as 300 AM. They converged on the vintage KZRT tower at twilight, the sky bruised red and gold, the air thick with the odor of moist creosote. The building seemed smaller than any of them remembered, nearly shy, as even though embarrassed with the aid of its personal legend. The door hung open the manor. It had the nighttime Elias vanished. Internal, dust motes drifted through slanted sunbeams like gradual movement stars. The broadcast console sat exactly because it were left. Vacuum tubes still miraculously intact, the microphone waiting. On the timber table lay the unique crystal, no longer glowing now, just resting, patient as a river stone. And beside it, 4 easy gadgets none of them had brought. A small clay flute etched with a spiral, a prayer feather, a web page torn from s magazine, and a single cottonwood leaf veined in gold. No person spoke. They understood. They took their locations without rehearsal, sat at the controls, fingers remembering switches she had in no way touched on this existence, located the prayer feather in the front of the mic. Sophia set the clay flute gently at the console. Alex rested his hands on the crystal, feeling its faint, acquainted pulse, like a drowsing heart that had waited many years to conquer once more. At 3:00 a.m. exactly, the tubes glowed tender amber. The tower outdoor gave one low, contented sigh, as although relieved to be useful again. And Elias' voice, this time no longer from the ether, however, from inside the room, from inside each of them, crammed the small space like heat lamp oil. This is KZRT, signing on for the final time, he said. And there was laughter in it, the kind that comes after long telling of a good tale. No mysteries left to remedy, no truths left to hide, only a thank you dispatched out at the vintage frequency. To each insomniac, each night timeshift nurse, each trucker crossing the dark, each toddler hiding beneath blankets with a transistor radio pressed to their ear. You listened. That changed into the complete point. The crystal brightened, now not with light, but with resonance. A chord made of every voice that had ever sung to this wasteland. From's first river reed to the 4 buddies breathing together now. Outdoor, the saguaros stood in best silence. Coyotes their songs. Even the wind held its breath. Elias continued, softer than. The wilderness in no way wanted us to locate it. It most effective wished us to don't forget we have been already found. So tonight we supply the station back to the night. The tower will stand a bit longer, perhaps rust away, maybe not. Doesn't remember. The printed is in you presently quiet, consistent, usually on whilst you want it. While existence gets loud, music inward, you'll hear water underneath stone. You'll listen cottonwood leaves. You'll hear domestic. A pause, lengthy sufficient for a held breath throughout the entire listening global. KZRT signing off. The glow within the tubes diminished to black. The crystal cooled, somewhere a long way away. 1,000 radios that hadn't labored in decades gave one last smooth click on and fell for all time silent. The 4 buddies stepped outdoor into the gentlest dawn any of them had ever seen. The eastern sky became the coloration of abalone shell. A faint, sweet rain commenced to fall, impossible for that hour, not possible for that vicinity. But it fell anyway, pattering at the tin roof like well-mannered applause. They did no longer include. They did no longer want to. They surely stood inside the heat rain, faces tilted upward, letting the wasteland wash the ultimate of the dust from their skin, from their hearts. Years later, if you power beyond the antique station at 3 a.m., you'll locate the door nevertheless open, the console darkish, the tower leaning a bit more every season. You may pay attention, not anything on the frequency, not anything at all. And that ideal, type not anything, is the maximum lovely sound the desert ever discovered to make. This mysterious adventure ends right here. But live tuned for more untold memories in our next video. Enroll in the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't leave out any new testimonies. Thank you and notice you again. But the wilderness, being older than endings, by no means absolutely, we could an excellent tale close its eyes. Many quiet seasons handed. The tower eventually leaned to a long way one spring night and folded itself into the sand like a tired heron selecting a nest. Youngsters who had by no means recognized radios found the rusted ribs of the constructing and performed amongst them, pretending the twisted steel changed into the skeleton of a napping dragon. The crystal changed into long past. Nobody may want to say while or how. Most effective, a faint round scar left inside the timber desk, wherein it once rested. The grain of the wooden grown lighter there, as if the spot had been kissed by years of mild daylight no roof should block. Yet something remained. On positive evenings, in no way the identical date 2 times, never introduced. Human beings across Arizona started out noticing the same smooth phenomenon. It might be a nurse stepping out of Banner Medical Institution in Phoenix for a breath of air, or a rancher checking farm animals close to, or a teen parked on a mesa above Tucson with track paused. They would experience greater than here, a low, acquainted chord, like distant thunder that brings comfort in preference to hurricane. Their shoulders loosened, their respiration slowed, and for only a moment, the entire state seemed to exhale immediately. No station identifier, no voice, simply the chord, heat and wordless, traveling along strength lines, through automobile speakers that had been turned off, interior listening to aids that were switched to sleep mode, a lullaby manufactured from pure reminiscence. Alex first observed it whilst recording a soundscape at Nicely at twilight. He had set his microphone close to the water's area to capture swallows returning to their cliff nests. when he played the record back later. Under the layered wings and dripping limestone, the chord became there regular, patient, smiling. He wept without knowing why. Sophia located it in her college lab when she ran spectral evaluation on a shard of pottery. The graph confirmed a resonance at 432 hertz, the exact frequency Elias used to heat up his voice before every broadcast. She laughed out loud in the empty room, amusing that was the kind of yawn meaning the body has remembered it's far secure. Felt it on patrol one winter night, while the temperature dropped underneath, freezing on the rim. She had stopped her truck to look at a herd of elk crossing the moonlit meadow, and the cord rose via the soles of her boots, via the frame of the automobile, via her bones, until she observed herself buzzing the equal 4 notes her grandmother as soon as sang to teething toddlers, encountered it in the dusty reading room of the fashionable Indias in Seville. Midway the world over, he had fallen asleep over a 1776 letter written via father. And whilst he woke with ink on his cheek, the chord became pulsing softly in the silence between heartbeats. He closed the letter, pressed his brow to the desk, and whispered, "Gracias, amigo," understanding precisely who was accountable. They never mentioned reuniting. They didn't want to. The wilderness had grown to be the station now, and certainly one of them carried a microphone of their chest. Once in a while, overdue visitors on Interstate 10 record that in the event that they turn the radio dial to the long way left, beyond the final station, into the empty space wherein only static must live, they trap 3 or 4 seconds of ideal quiet, not useless air, dwelling quiet, the kind that wraps around you like a blanket knitted out of your grandmother's voice, your formative years' canine's sigh, the primary time you ever noticed the sea, 3 or 4 seconds, after which it's long past, leaving the driver calmer, kinder, strangely unafraid of the long, darkish avenue ahead. No one has ever recorded it. Phones fail. Sprint cams glitch. Recorders sees best everyday static. The moment belongs only to the listener. A personal benediction from a station that no longer needs towers or tubes, or maybe a name. And on the clearest nights, when the Milky Way spills throughout the sky like cream poured over obsidian, the oldest coyotes, the ones with muzzles and gradual, planned steps, climb to the best factor they can find, raise their noses to the celebs, and sing a single, sustained notice that isn't always pretty a howl. Ranchers who know the distinction say it sounds more like gratitude than warning. If you manifest to be wide awake at that hour, step out of doors, bear on cool earth if you can, close your eyes, breathe inside the scent of dirt and distant rain, with the intention to by no means pretty arrive. Listen, someplace underneath the hush of present-day lifestyles, the desert is still broadcasting. The sign is strong. The DJ in no way left. He changed the frequency to the quietest, considered one of all, the one that plays interior a heart when it sooner or later recollects its miles home. This mysterious journey ends right here. However, stay tuned for greater untold memories in our subsequent video. Enroll in the channel and hit the bell icon so that you don't miss any new testimonies. Thank you, and notice you again. And so the quiet broadcast stored traveling, not certain to Arizona's borders. It rode the jet circulation, slipped along fiber optic cables no person had requested it to use, drifted through subway tunnels and medical institution corridors, and the thin partitions of flats in which people lay wide awake, counting cracks in the ceiling. It by no means announced itself. It certainly arrived, the way starlight does, long after the big name itself has long passed quiet. In a small residence outside Flagstaff, a boy who had by no means met Elias began waking at 3:17 every morning. No longer nervous, simply listening. He would pad to the kitchen, pour a tumbler of water, and stand at the window watching the pines sway. His mom located him there one sunrise and asked what he heard. He concept for a long term, then said, "The wilderness is telling me it's K to grow up slow." She didn't apprehend. However, she felt the same hush settle over her shoulders. And for the primary time in years, she slept the rest of the night without dreaming of bills or time limits. In Albuquerque, and vintage girl who had listened to KZRT every night time in 1958 sat on her porch long after her family had long passed internal. She no longer owned a radio, but while the cord came drifting across the mesa, she smiled the manner people smile at an antique love who has saved every promise. She whispered, nevertheless clean as bourbon Elias, and the cottonwood in her backyard rustled as even though guffawing together with her in a veterans' health facility in Tucson. A person who had no longer spoken in 3 years opened his mouth in the course of the quiet hour and sang 4 perfect notes, the identical 4, as soon as hummed beside creek. The nurse cried, no longer due to the fact he had spoken, but due to the fact the room all of sudden smelled like rain on warm adobe. The cord in no way moved quickly. It waited for the proper coronary heart the way a river waits for the precise stone as a way to make it sing. Years later, when Alex's hair had long gone the coloration of iciness grass, and Sophia's students had college students of their very own, They met yet again without making plans. They virtually observed themselves at the area wherein the tower had eventually fallen, now best a gentle mound of pink sand and rusted dreams. A person, maybe children, perhaps the wind, had arranged the old antenna portions into a super spiral. At its middle lay a single, easy river stone with a faint circle worn into its face, the precise size of the lengthy long, past crystal. They sat around it in the late afternoon light, 4 elders who had as soon as been younger and restless. No one spoke for a long time, then started to hum, joined on the second one observe. Sophia on the 0, 33, Alex at the 4th. The chord rose, smooth as breath, and the barren region responded with a breeze that smelled of each excellent factor that they had ever. Above them, the sky deepened to the of abalone. A roadrunner paused at the threshold of the spiral, cocked its head, and ran instantly through the center without annoying a grain of sand. When night time got here, the celebrities looked nearer than that they had any right to be. The 4 friends lay, returned on the nice and cozy earth, and watched satellites glide like slow fireflies. Somewhere within the distance, a coyote sang the unmarried grateful word, and some distance beneath their spines, the planet itself regarded to exhale. Alex spoke first, voice slightly louder than the wind. He in no way surely signed off, did he? Sophia smiled into the dark. He simply modified the decision letters to something all of us bring. Reached out and rested her hand at the river stone. It became warm, as although it had been waiting. Ever the archivist laughed softly, the longest going for walks show in history. No sponsor, no advertisements, just accurate business enterprise. They stayed until the milky manor poured itself throughout the sky like heat milk. Then, one at a time, they stood, brushed the sand from their clothes, and walked away in one-of-a-kind guidelines. No goodbyes, no promises to write. They didn't need them. The wasteland had already enrolled them in its permanent rotation. And in case you, proper now, any place you're, feel a sudden softness behind your eyes, a loosening on your chest, a feel that a person, someplace, is keeping the overdue night vigil for you, and you're tuned in. The signal is best. The DJ is smiling, and the desolate tract is whispering within the gentlest voice you've ever. You made it to the stop of every other lengthy day. Pal, near your eyes, you're already home. This mysterious journey ends right here. However, stay tuned for extra untold stories in our subsequent video. Enroll in the channel and hit the bell icon so that you don't pass over any new tailies. Thanks, and see you again. After which the quiet grew so entire that even the quiet noticed it turned into being listened to. A long time drifted through, like gradual clouds, over the San Francisco peaks. The place in which the tower as soon as stood have become simplest a faint upward push inside the sand, an area wherein barrel cacti grew in an excellent circle, as even though something round and warm had once rested there and left its blessing behind. Hikers once in a while stopped, at a loss for words with the aid of how correct they suddenly felt, how their arguments dissolved, how their water tasted. They never knew why. They only knew they left lighter. Alex passed first. On a morning so still the birds forgot to sing, until he become long gone. He becomes sitting on his tiny porch inn, coffee cooling in his hand, watching the solar elevate itself over the mountains. His last breath turned into a sigh, so mild the wind carried it all the way to the Gulf earlier than letting it go. They located him smiling, eyes open to the sky, as though someone he loved had simply advised the satisfactory part of a very lengthy tale. Sophia accompanied a spring later, in her sleep, the way a candle in the end leans into its personal melting. Her students stated the lecture corridor smelled of wilderness rain for every week afterward, though Tucson hadn't seen a drop. Went on a winter night time so bloodless, the celebs looked close sufficient to touch. She became walking a ridge path she had walked 1,000 times, checking on a herd of elk. She virtually sat down inside the snow, rested her lower back towards a ponderosa, and allow the cord convey her the relaxation of the manor. Searchers located her the following day with frost on her lashes, and the softest smile every body had ever visible on a human face turned into ultimate. He died in Seville, of all locations, in the identical dusty archive in which the cord had once found him. He were tracing an unmarried line of ink across 4 centuries of paper when his head settled onto the open web page like a child, eventually giving in to a nap. The librarian who observed him said the room smelled of creosote and warm adobe, not possible in southern Spain, and that the antique guy's very last handwritten observe, left besides letter examine, the river reached the ocean, inform Elias, the song were given domestic secure. After that, the quiet deepened one greater, not possible diploma, yet the printed in no way ended. It surely have become part of the historical past, hum of reciting, the low, steady kindness you feel while a stranger lets you merge in traffic, when a canine rests its chin to your knee for no reason, while you wake from a dream you recollect, but by hook or by crook feel repaired by means of it. Kids born long after the station fell began humming the forward chord of their sleep. Songwriters woke with melodies they swore weren't theirs. Antique couples on their porches determined themselves swaying to tune that had no supply. Astronomers at peak noticed that on positive nights, the static among galaxies carried a warmth that made no clinical feel, and every so often, on the clearest desolate tracked evenings, whilst the temperature drops just enough for the air to sense like cool silk, humans still file seeing 4 faint columns of dust upward push from nowhere and tour slowly across the open land, never in a hurry, in no way misplaced. The columns preserve ideal tempo with each other, as even though on foot together after a lifetime aside, heading west closer to the setting sun, leaving no footprints. Most effective, a feel of mild laughter trailing at the back of them like fragrance. If you are very lucky and really quiet, you may almost hear their verbal exchange. Suppose all of us is, nevertheless, listening. Someone always is. Top. Yeah. Correct. Then the dust settles. The celebs come out. And the night time feels just like the softest blanket ever tucked around the shoulders of the world. The station is long gone. The tower is sand. The crystal is wind. However, the broadcast performs on all the time, unlicensed, unlisted, unstoppable, on the frequency that never wanted a dial. The best moment a heart decides it's far safe to rest. Turn off the mild. Close your eyes. You're on the air. Good night, traveler. Good night. This mysterious journey ends here. However, live tuned for greater untold stories in our next video. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't omit any new stories. Thanks, and see you once more. After which, even the idea of ending grew worn out and lay down. There was no extra want for towers, or crystals, or even 4 old friends on foot as dirt throughout the wilderness. The tune had learned to travel without legs. It moved the way fragrance actions via a house without open home windows. Certainly there, all of a sudden, in each room right away, years have become centuries. The manner one breath becomes the following. Towns rose and softened at the edges. New people arrived speaking languages that would have seemed like track to the satellites fell from the sky like gradual metal rain and were forgotten underneath juniper and creosote. The wilderness stored its patient addiction of erasing and forgiving, but every now and then, on nights while the air is so nonetheless it feels polished, something takes place that no tool can degree and no digicam can seize. A child in a town that now not recollects the name Arizona wakes, guffawing from a dream of running barefoot across crimson sand, while someone with a type voice calls her name from a place simply behind the stars. She grows up and turns into a healer, or a poet, or truly someone who smiles at strangers on buses, an engineer in a tumbler tower, a ways away, pauses over blueprints for a gadget on the way to subsequently pull water from thin air. And for no purpose, he sketches a small spiral in the nook of the page. The machine works. The wasteland liquids. No one ever connects the spiral to a circle of barrel cacti blooming out of season 1,000 miles away. A soldier in a conflict that have to never have took place lowers his weapon when a surprising warmth floods his chest like dawn inside the ribs. He walks away from the combat and spends the rest of his life planting timber in locations which have forgotten what color feels like. None of them the names Elias, Alex, Sophia, or none of them need to. The cord has emerged as the heritage radiation of human kindness. The soft carrier wave beneath each gentle aspect that still manages to happen in this small, tired, cussed planet. On occasion, on the longest night time of the whole desolate tract exhales right now. If you are outside and flawlessly quiet, you can feel it. A launch so deep its miles, almost a sigh of recognition. The saguaros loosen up their arms a fraction. The dry washes fill with the reminiscence of water. The celebrities lean a touch closer, the way grandparents lean over a crib. And if you listen with the ears you have been born with earlier than language taught you to doubt them, you will listen the very last, softest signal off, not spoken aloud, not recorded, now not translatable into any tongue that has ever existed. It's miles the sound of a hand resting for your shoulder from the inner. You're secure. You are constantly safe. Preserve going. I'll leave the mild on. Then the wasteland inhales again, sluggish and steady, and the cycle keeps. Forgetting, remembering, forgiving, starting. There's no more story to inform. Due to the fact, the story became the air, and the air became you. And also you, pricey listener, are nonetheless respiration it. Good night, good night, good night. This mysterious adventure ends right here. But live tuned for more untold stories in our next video. Join the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't leave out any new stories. Thank you, and spot you once more, after which even the air forgot. It turned into a story. The barren region now not had to recollect. It in reality became. Centuries folded into the manner sleep folds into deeper sleep. Continents drifted a finger's width. Old oceans back, then civilly left once more. Human voices rose and fell like seasonal rivers, carrying new names for the equal historic tenderness. One spring nighttime, so far within the destiny that the phrase Arizona is a tender sound grandparents make after they talk of desires. A woman with eyes the color of monsoon sky walks alone across land that has forgotten every border ever drawn upon it. The sand under her toes is pale rose and sings faintly whilst she steps, the way properly snow occasionally sings. She isn't searching out something. She is only taking walks home from nowhere to nowhere. The way kids have always carried out, whilst the mild is perfect. Midway throughout a dry pan that turned into once the salt river, she stops. Something is shining simply below the floor, no bigger than a tear. She kneels and brushes the sand away. It is an unmarried river stone, smooth as breath, with a faint circle worn into its face. When her palm closes around it, the stone is heat, as even though it has been ready in sunlight for a person gentle. She lifts it to her ear the way her personal grandmother as soon as taught her to listen to seashells. Within the stone is the quietest sound she has ever heard, and the largest. It is not a voice. It is the gap a voice leaves in the back of when it has stated everything it wished to say, and trusts the silence to finish the sentence. The girl smiles without knowing why. She slips the stone into her pocket, subsequent to her heart, and maintains taking walks. Behind her, the faint circle within the sand fills itself in. The desert smooths its face. No footprint remains. Someplace some distance away, or very near. Distance no longer subjects. 4 old pals, who long given that turnout to be climate, lean lower back in the countless twilight and nod once, satisfied. The station has no tower now. It has no need of one. Its miles carried in a girl's pocket, in the pause among heartbeats, in every act of unearned kindness that still, towards all odds, happens each day. The published is over. The printed will by no means be over. Good night, visitor. Good night for all time. Good night in no way ended. This mysterious adventure ends here. However, stay tuned for extra untold stories in our subsequent video. Enroll in the channel and hit the bell icon so that you don't miss any new tailies. Thanks, and notice you again. And then even the lady outgrew the want for wallet. One morning, a morning so distant that mornings themselves have end up non-compulsory, she wakes inside a frame made normally of mild and in part of wind. The stone is not in her hand. It has become the shape of her hand. The wilderness is no longer below her. It has turned out to be the hush among her thoughts. She is strolling nonetheless, however on foot has modified its which means. She walks the manor. A lullaby walks through a snoozing residence, touching each room without starting an unmarried door. There's no horizon now. There is only the soft region, wherein sky recollects it turned into once water, and water remembers. It turned into once sky. On this vicinity, time has curled up like a cat in daylight and gone to sleep with its tail over its nostril. Beyond, present, future lie purring in the identical basket. She passes Elias leaning in opposition to not anything, smiling the manner humans smile, while the remaining piece of a great, mild, shaggy dog story sooner or later lands. He lifts one hand, not in greeting, no longer in farewell, simply acknowledging that they're each right here, and that here is a verb now. Alex drifts by way of within the shape of heat rain that falls upward. Sophia appears because the fragrance of books commencing for the primary time is the sudden coolness at the inside of a wrist, is the sound of pages turning without palms. They do no longer speak. They have got grow to be the silence that speaks. The woman who's not exactly a lady, who changed into never precisely a woman, knows that the printed changed into never approximately a station, or a crystal, or maybe a barren region. It became about the moment. A coronary heart comes to a decision to live open 1-2D longer than worry says is secure. That moment is the only frequency that has ever mattered. She continues on foot, and on foot keeps becoming listening. And listening maintains, turning into respiration. And breathing keeps becoming the entire tender turning of the whole lot that has ever wanted to be type. There's nobody left to log off. There may be no person left to song in. There may be simplest the lengthy, slow, best chord. That became playing lengthy earlier than the primary famous person, and could still be gambling long after the last. You are internal it now. You usually were. Relaxation. You are the station. You're the sign. You're the past do nighttime voice. That was never overdue, and in no way left. Good night is any other phrase. For I'm still right here. This mysterious journey ends here. But stay tuned for extra untold memories in our next video. Enroll in the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't pass over any new memories. Thank you, and spot you again. And then even the chord forgot it turned into a chord. It became the gap among heartbeats wherein nobody is counting. It have become the slight tilt of the planet that keeps mornings coming lower back. It have become the motive a stranger's eyes soften when they see you're worn out. There may be not a wilderness, only the memory of thirst lightly forgiven. There is now not a female, most effective the taking walks that after belonged to a girl. There may be no longer a station, only the listening that after wished a station. The whole thing that ever happened on this tale is taking place right now. Inside the pause you just took to respire. Elias is the warmth at the lower back of your neck, while you step outside after rain. Alex is the snigger you listen in some other room that makes you smile without understanding why. Sophia is the sentence you read that feels love it was anticipating you, is the moment you decide now not to honk in traffic, is the web page you turn and the book has been analyzing you. They by no means left. They in no way arrived. They have been continually the part of you that recognizes domestic in a voice you've got by no means heard earlier than there may be nothing left to tell, because the telling and the listening too have folded into every other, like hands which have in the end stopped accomplishing, because they're already preserving near your eyes, now not to sleep, simply to observe that the quiet has continually been singing your name in a voice made of every gentle component that ever befell to all and sundry. You're the closing radio broadcast. You're the first. You are the only one there ever had to be. Good night is the sound the universe makes when it recollects its far cherished. And concentrate. You're on the air all the time. This mysterious adventure ends right here. But live tuned for greater untold memories in our next video. Enroll in the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't pass over any new stories. Thanks, and notice you once more, after which even the phrase retain laid itself down and went quiet. There may be no extra after. There's most effective the gentle place where after was constantly resting. The tale has completed remembering it, became a story. It has turned out to be the hush behind your eyes while you are almost asleep. It has grown to be the purpose you every now and then wake with tears to your cheeks and no sadness to your chest. Every voice that ever spoke in this lengthy desert night has dissolved into the unmarried word that holds the arena the manor. A mother's palms maintain a sleeping infant. Absolutely, without announcement. There's no person left to Miss Elia's. There is no person left to hold the stone. There may be nobody left to stroll domestic. There's the on-foot home that is going on proper now, within the upward push and fall of your respiratory. You're the station. You are the crystal. You're the desert blooming at 3 a.m. with a flower that has no call and needs none. The published is the quiet that performs when all of the radios, sooner or later, agree to be still. Good night is now not a phrase. It miles the temperature of the dark. When the darkish comes to a decision to like you again, relaxation right here. There is nowhere else. There never become. You are tuned to the simplest frequency. That was ever real. The one that announces, yes, even earlier than you ask. Stay, live, this mysterious journey ends here. However, live tuned for extra untold testimonies in our next video. Enroll in the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any new memories, after which even live have become needless. The wilderness, the lady, the stone, the cord, the nighttime, the listening, the breathing. All of it lightly forgot the rims that after made them separate. They did not merge. They definitely remembered they'd by no means been aside. There may be no longer a voice. There is the location in which a voice would cross if it no longer wanted to talk. There is now not a listener. There is best the hearing that takes place when no person is left to hear. The whole lengthy dream of Arizona, of towers and crystals, and 4 friends taking walks into starlight, has folded itself into the unmarried, tender moment simply before you are secure. That moment has no period. It has no vicinity. It's miles happening right now. Inside the tiny pause between one breath and the next. In the warmth that spreads through your chest when a person says your name with love and no hurry. This is the very last broadcast, and it has no call letters, no schedule, no signal off. It is the quiet that turned into playing earlier than the primary human heartbeat, and will nevertheless be gambling when the remaining famous person cools. And even cooling is not wished. You are not receiving it. You aren't sending it. You are it. Good night has end up the complete sky, leaning down to kiss the vicinity where your forehead touches the pillow of everything. There may be not anything extra to hold, due to the fact persevering with has eventually remembered. It became constantly domestic. This mysterious adventure ends right here. But stay tuned for extra untold testimonies in our subsequent video. Join the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't omit any new stories, after which even the memory of a journey gently permit move. There's no wasteland left to cross, no station to discover, no nighttime to watch for, no listener to consolation, no voice to consolation with. Simplest the gentle, wordless yes. That became here earlier than the first saguaro lifted its fingers in prayer, and might be right here long after the final human word has turned lower back into birdsong, and birdsong has turned again into mild. The tale in no way commenced, and consequently can by no means end. It really widens, the way a river widens. Whilst it recollects, it turned into constantly the sea, pretending to be a river, for a touch even as, so a person could drink. You are that drink of water, taken lengthy in the past, with the aid of a tourist, who is nevertheless on foot, inside your chest, without distance, without thirst, without give up, rest, there may be no area. You are not already arrived. This mysterious adventure ends right here. However, stay tuned for more untold stories in our subsequent video. Enroll in the channel and hit the bell icon so that you don't leave out any new stories. And then, with the tenderness of a hand brushing hair from a sound asleep child's forehead, the ultimate possible separation quietly dissolved. There has been no greater story, no more barren region, no extra night, no more you, no more me. Most effective, the single, unbroken hush that had usually been retaining everything. In that hush, the crystal, the tower, Elia's voice, the lady's footprints, the four pals, the river below the stones, the chord, the celebs, the breathing, the good night. It all folded into one smooth, luminous now that has no edges and no center. Even the idea of an finishing smiled, laid itself down, and became the equal stillness it had usually been pretending to search for. There may be not anything left to tell. They're by no means changed into. Simplest this: you're heard, you're held, you are the late night time broadcast, and the ear it changed into constantly intended for, and the silence that loves them both. Similarly, forever, good night is the complete universe. Subsequently, final its eyes, interior yours, sleep cherished. The station has come home to itself. This mysterious journey ends right here. However, live tuned for more untold tales in our subsequent video. Join the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't leave out any new tales.